Today's lesson is Surviving on the Move, the Great Wildebeest Migration. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about nature. We're talking about a great migration of some animals in Africa, and these animals are called wildebeests, okay? And you may have seen them on TV on some kind of documentary or something. And there are examples of migrations all over the world. I think here in Taiwan there's a migration of butterflies. During the winter, the purple crow butterfly flies from the north and central part of Taiwan down to Maolin in the south, so a lot of people go down there to check that out. But, of course, there are other migrations in other parts of the world, especially the one we're going to talk about today.
Yes, and this is one of those great animal migrations. It's been going on for probably millennia, I guess it's safe to say. And even with all of the different changes and pressures that are being put on animals in wild spaces, due to human development and things like that, the wildebeest march on. So let's read more about Surviving on the Move, the Great Wildebeest Migration, by listening to the first paragraph. Surviving on the Move, the Great Wildebeest Migration. If you've watched the Disney movie, The Lion King, then you have some idea of what the Great Wildebeest Migration is. In one of the film's most memorable scenes, a wildebeest stampede forever changes the course of young Simba's life. In the movie, the wildebeests disappear, leaving dust and death in their wake. But their annual migration in the real world is also a movie-worthy event.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 migration 指动物迁徙，例如 Climate change is forcing some animals to change their migration patterns. 气候变迁迫使一些动物改变它们的迁徙模式。或者 The researchers spend years observing the migration of birds in that place. 研究人员花了数年的时间观察鸟类在那个地方的迁徙。继续看到形容词 memorable 表示难忘的，值得纪念的。例如 There were so many memorable moments from my trip. 我的旅程有很多难忘的时刻。或是 Steve had a memorable vacation to Japan. Steve 有一场难忘的日本假期。
Okay, so in the title, we're surviving on the move. If you're on the move, of course, you're in motion, you're moving. And, of course, these are animals that are on the move. They are migrating, going from one place to another. Now, here in the first paragraph, it says, if you've watched the Disney movie The Lion King, then you have some idea of what the Great Wildebeest Migration is. So, yes, if you're a fan of Disney movies, a lot of people like them. They have animated movies. And this one, The Lion King, came out many years ago, and it's about a lion becoming a man or something like that. But if you have seen this movie, then you also would have seen this wildebeest migration, which was depicted in this movie.
Yes, that's one of the big scenes in the film. As it says, in one of the film's most memorable scenes, a wildebeest stampede forever changes the course of young Simba's life. Wow, very interesting. So it's obviously a big part of the plot of this film. If you've seen it, I'm sure you do remember this memorable scene because, of course, something memorable is worth remembering. It's something that was very interesting, very impactful, and for many years afterwards, you will have memories of this thing. A memorable day could be a big, important day in your life, and you remember all the details, the day you got married, the day you had your first child, or something like that. Or it could just be something that you remember from a film or from a song or from a book. A very memorable episode or a memorable scene is something that sticks in your mind. And in this scene, this part of the film, a wildebeest stampede forever changes the course of young Simba's life. A stampede is a dangerous rushing of animals or people from one place to another. When we think of stampedes, we do often think of animals sort of rushing around in panic, and they kind of knock over anything that gets in their way. This would be generally for larger animals, things like horses or cows or bulls, something like that. If they stampede, and we can use it both as a noun and as a verb, It means they rush forward as a solid wall of animal flesh, and they would kind of knock down any people who were unlucky enough to be in the way of the stampede. Some people do choose. Of course, there's that running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain, that happens every year. That is a controlled stampede, but also out in the wild when you see a lot of animals rushing around together in one direction, knocking over and destroying anything in their path. That is a stampede. And so what happens after the stampede in the movie?
Well, in the movie, the wildebeests disappear, leaving dust and death in their wake. But their annual migration in the real world is also a movie-worthy event. So again, this is what happens in the movie. The wildebeests, they stampede by, and then they disappear. So after they disappear, they leave some things behind. They leave dust and death in their wake. Okay, if you've seen boats on the ocean, they're moving through the water, they leave a wave on both sides of the boat. Those are called the wake. Okay, so something is in their wake when something is the aftermath of something, something that happens as a result of something. So because they stampeded through this area, it resulted in lots of dust in the sky and lots of death. Lots of other animals died as a result of that stampede.
But as it says, the annual migration in the real world, not in a cartoon film, is also a movie-worthy event. It's worth a movie. It's worth filming. It's worth maybe watching a nature program about it. It is a very epic type of animal behavior. It's something that happens every year, and it is truly impressive. So let's find out more about it in the second part of the article. The Great Migration is a natural phenomenon that takes place across Kenya's Masai Mara and Tanzania's Serengeti National Park every year. Roughly 2 million wildebeests, along with other animals like zebras and gazelles, cross the plains in search of water and grass. They follow seasonal rains to fresh feeding grounds, eventually looping back to roughly where they started.
第二部分看到名词 phenomenon， 它的意思是现象。例如 Earthquakes are a natural phenomenon， 地震是自然现象。也可以说No one could explain the strange phenomenon that was seen in the sky last night. 没有人能解释昨晚天空中看到的异象。再来介绍副词 roughly， 表示大致的、近似的、粗略的。我们可以说 It will take roughly an hour to get to the airport. 抵达机场大概要花1小时。又或者说 I've spent roughly 4 hours on this essay. 我大约花了4个小时在写这篇文章。后面看到 seasonal 这个单字，它是形容词，它的意思是季节的、季节性的。例如 Many stores offer discounts on seasonal items during the holidays. 许多商店在假期期间提供季节性商品的折扣。再看一个例子 This part of the country is highly affected by seasonal storms. 该国的这一区相当容易遭受季节性暴风雨侵袭。
Okay, so let's talk some more about the Great Migration of the wildebeests in Africa. The Great Migration is a natural phenomenon that takes place across Kenya's Masai Mara and Tanzania's Serengeti National Park every year. Okay, so if you want to check out this particular stampede, you can probably go to Kenya or Tanzania. Remember, Africa is a huge continent and Kenya is in East Africa, and this is where this Great Migration takes place. We're describing this migration as a natural phenomenon. That's just something that happens in nature. It's usually something quite big and spectacular, like a tornado is a natural phenomenon. And then the plural of this word is phenomena. Typhoons and tornadoes are natural phenomena.
Yes, indeed. So to give us an idea of how movie-worthy or epic this wildebeest migration is, let's look at some numbers. It says roughly 2 million wildebeests, along with other animals like zebras and gazelles, cross the plains in search of water and grass. So there we have at least 2 million, approximately, or roughly 2 million animals, along with, I'm sure, several thousands of others of these zebras and gazelles. When we say roughly, it's basically the saying approximately. Of course, no one is going to go out there and count all the wildebeest. That would be impossible and probably pointless. So we can make a good guess. We can make kind of an educated guess based on as many large pictures as they have or sort of averages horses and things like that. So approximately, roughly around 2 million wildebeests, along with other animals like zebras and gazelles. All of these, of course, are herbivore animals, grass-eating animals, so they travel together to provide safety for each other. So they cross the plains. When we talk about grasslands, prairies, savannas, plains, these are all different ways of saying very flat land that we find in different parts of the world based on local geography. So the plains or the prairies or the savanna, I think, is the proper term for African plains. And they are in search of water and grass because, of course, as the weather changes and the summer warms up, certain places get hotter and drier and other places have more rain and cooler weather. So they're following these seasonal differences in the climate.
Right. Things that happen only during certain parts of the year are seasonal. And here, rains is a plural noun. This is talking about different times and different areas in which rain falls. So they follow these seasonal rains, and they're doing this to find fresh feeding grounds, to look for food, because I guess food has run out in other areas. So they head over to these other areas to get more grass to eat, and then they loop back to roughly where they started. So here we've got the word loop, which can be both a noun and a verb. If you've ever been to Chicago, the central part of Chicago is called the Loop because there's a river that kind of goes in a loop there. It goes in a circle. So that's what loop means. It's kind of like a circle. And in this particular case, the word loop is being used as a verb. They kind of work their way back to where they started.
Interesting. So they go in a big circle. I guess that means that they always have fresh grass in front of them instead of doubling back and going back over ground they've already crossed. So that all makes sense. And that is a big voyage of the wildebeests and their assorted friends and herbivore cousins. Let's find out more about what is waiting for the wildebeest as they go on their long migration. Along the way, the wildebeests face many dangers. Lions, crocodiles, and hyenas lie in wait to pick off weaker herd members. The terrain itself also presents risks. Some wildebeests drown crossing rivers, and others die from lack of food or water. However, while the migration is dangerous for individual wildebeests, the herd's constant hunt for food is what ensures its continued survival.
第三部分介绍片语 along the way 指的是在此过程中。举例 The presentation started off slowly, but the speaker picked up the pace along the way. 这场简报一开始节奏很慢，但讲者在过程中加快了速度。又或者说 Along the way, I learned about the local people. 过程中我学到当地人相关的事情。接着看到 lie in wait 这个片语，表示埋伏、伏击。例如 The police were lying in wait when the thief emerged from the house. 小偷从那间屋子现身时，警察在一旁埋伏着。也可以说 The tiger was lying in wait for its prey. 老虎埋伏等待着它的猎物。最后看到 herd 这个单字，它是名词，表示兽群、畜群。我们可以说 The farmer has a small herd of cows that he keeps for their milk. 那个农夫养了一小群乳牛，以便取得牛奶。最后一个例子 From our vehicle, we saw a herd of elephants cooling off in the river. 我们从车上看到了一群大象在河里降温。
Okay, here's the third and final part of our lesson for today. Now, along the way, the wildebeests face many dangers. So here, along the way just means while they're traveling or while they're moving in this loop, while they're migrating from place to place, they face many dangers. So this happens to us, like, for example, if you're going to go to somebody's house for something, you can pick up something on the way. It's similar, like, well, can you stop at the store and pick up some milk on the way? We need some milk or something. Can you do that for me while you're traveling from one place to the other? Just in the middle, it's something that happens.
There you go. We'll stop for gas on the way to the airport or along the way too. So on the migration, as they are doing this long loop, this long voyage, they face many dangers. Of course, these are wild animals living out in the wild, and some pretty wild things can happen. What are some of the dangers they face? Well, here are some obvious ones. Lions, crocodiles, and hyenas lie in wait to pick off weaker herd members. So yeah, yes, these are, of course, herbivore animals, the wildebeests, the gazelles, the zebras, and they are also hunted. They are the food of the predator animals, the hunting animals, the meat-eating animals, like the lions, like the crocodiles that, of course, infest many of the rivers at that time. The hyenas, those sort of wild dogs that work and hunt in packs in Africa. I guess we could throw in leopards as well. Those would be a danger. Cheetahs, those would be a danger. Maybe even African wild dogs for some of the younger or injured members of the wildebeest herd. So they are all there. They're all waiting to catch and eat the wildebeest. They lie in wait to pick off weaker herd members. When you lie in wait, it basically means you're kind of hidden somewhere waiting for something or someone to come along. A hunter might lie in wait for a deer or a bird or a duck to fly past where he's waiting there. He's lying in wait. He's hiding. Or the police could lie in wait knowing that the criminal lives in this address. They know that he's away, but eventually he has to come back home. So the police will lie in wait to jump out and arrest that person. And they are there to pick off weaker herd members. When we pick something off, we're kind of almost as if you're in front of a fruit tree and you pick off the apples that are easiest to get, the ones that are closest to the ground or the ones that look the ripest and the freshest and the most delicious. In the same way, as I'm sure many of you who've watched nature documentaries on television, the lions, the hyenas, the other hunting animals, they will often go after the older members of the herd, the younger members, the injured members. They're kind of going for the ones that are easier to catch and easier to trap and eat. So that's why we say they are picking off weaker herd members. They would never go in and try to kill all the wildebeest. Of course, that would be impossible for, a dozen lions to do. So they'll find the easiest ones to catch, the ones that are slower and at the back of the herd. And when we talk about a herd, this is a large group, generally again, of grass-eating, of herbivore animals, and they often travel in packs. Well, a pack of grass-eating animals, a herd, is a very good collective term. You might see a herd of sheep or a herd of cow in a farmer's field as you're driving around the country. And, of course, in Africa, we will find large herds of wildebeest, zebras, giraffes even would travel in smaller herds. We wouldn't usually use this for a hunting animal. You wouldn't say a herd of hyenas. You'd often say a pack of hyenas or a pack of wolves. But a herd is a generally good term for a lot of these grass-eating herbivore animals that do travel and feed in a large group.
Yeah, if you're studying animals, of course, you need to know these words that refer to groups of animals. As you said, it's a herd of cattle here or a herd of wildebeest. We have a flock of birds, for example, a flock of sheep, etc. There are all sorts of words like that, which we won't get into now. But in this particular case, the wildebeest, they move in herds. So yes, indeed, these dangerous animals like lions, crocodiles, and hyenas, they're waiting. They're lying in wait to pick off those weak herd members. They kill them, they chase them down, and they rip them open and eat them and have a great meal. They eat the meat raw. They don't wait and cook it over a campfire. They just dig in right then and there. Now, the terrain itself also presents risks. Some wildebeests drown crossing rivers, and others die from lack of food or water. So it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. It's quite difficult for these beasts. The terrain itself does present risks. The terrain, of course, refers to the land and the quality of the land, whether it's hilly or whether it's flat. We're talking about basically the land and its characteristics. And yes, it has lots of risks there. For example, we do have rivers, and I guess wildebeests aren't natural swimmers. They might actually drown when they try to cross those rivers.
Yes, that is definitely something that happens. However, it says, while the migration is dangerous for individual wildebeests, the herd's constant hunt for food is what ensures its continued survival. So yes, there will be a certain number, certain percentage of the wildebeest that won't survive this migration every year. So it is dangerous for individual wildebeest, as we mentioned, the elderly, the injured, the young. They might have a higher chance of being picked off and eaten, but their constant hunt for food as a very large 2 million member wildebeest herd, it is what ensures their continued survival. And you can kind of understand the logic of traveling in a large pack means that more of them would survive than if they individually went off on these migrations and were individually easier to hunt. So by traveling in groups, or safety in numbers, to use a common English expression, they do end up, most of them, surviving the migration. They only have to do it again next year.
Yep, and of course they stick together. There is safety in numbers. The more of you there are, more likely you're going to survive. Although some of the weak members do get picked picked off by those dangerous animals lying in wait. And, of course, this is a quite interesting phenomenon in nature to go check out. If you don't want to go so far, of course, you can check out local migrations. And, of course, there are other migrations in different parts of the world. I think there's some kind of crab migration in some island down by Australia. Is that Christmas Island or something like that?
I think it might be, yeah, those really large land crabs.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Let's turn things over now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分提到，大迁徙是一种自然现象，每年发生在肯亚的马赛马拉和坦桑尼亚的塞伦盖提国家公园之间。文中是用 take place 来表达发生。那我们来整理表达事件发生啊，或者是举办举行的相关用法。首先第一个可以用到 take place 来表达事件发生，或是活动会议等等的举行。用来指举办举行时， take place 通常是指事先计划或安排好的事情。那这个片语呢，要用事物来当主词。举例来说， Their wedding will take place next month. 他们的婚礼将于下个月举行。好，第二个我们可以用到动词 host 或是 hold 来表达举行举办。常见的用法有两种。首先你可以用人或主办单位来当主词，这个用法就是人或主办单位加 hold 或是 host 再加活动。如果用事物或活动来当主词，这个用法会是活动加上 be held 或是 be hosted， 后面可以加 by 加人或主办单位。好，举例来说， The festival was held by the local government. 那个节庆是由当地政府主办的。好，那第三个我们可以用到 occur 这个动词，表达它是事件未规划或是非预期的发生，这时候语义会比 happen 还正式。occur 也可以表达事先安排好的活动的举行，那用法是要以事物当主词。例如， The event is scheduled to occur in Seattle. 那个活动安排在西雅图举行。好，课文下一句提到说，大约200万只牛羚以及斑马和瞪羚等其他动物穿越平原寻找水源和草地。文中它用 along with 来表达以及。那我们来整理这个片语介系词的用法。首先呢，它是课文用法，可以表达连同以及和什么什么一起。例如， Tim lost his wallet along with his ID and credit cards. Tim 把他的皮夹连同身份证和信用卡一起都弄丢了。好，那特别注意，我们用 A along with B 来当主词的话呢，这个动词是要随着 A 做变化，像是 Susan along with her parents is traveling to Europe next month. Susan 以及她的爸妈下个月要去欧洲旅游。那这边的动词我们是用 is 来配合 Susan 这个主词。好，第二个我们可以表达说，除了点点点之外还有什么？这时候 along with 的意思就相当于 in addition to 或是 besides。例如， Along with the dress, I also bought a scarf. 除了洋装，我还买了一条围巾。好，另外文中它有用到 in search of water and grass 来表达寻找水源和草地。search 当名词有寻找、搜寻的意思。那用到片语 in search of 加名词就可以表达寻找、追寻。例如， The boys went into the woods in search of adventure. 男孩们走进森林里来追寻冒险、追求冒险。好，那以上就是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Migration. Scientists are studying how climate change affects the migration patterns of many bird species. Memorable.The day she turned 15 was the most memorable birthday Kathleen ever had. Phenomenon. Climate change is a global phenomenon that is affecting people all around the world. Roughly. It is expected that the repairs to the bridge will take roughly 2 weeks to finish. Loop. The trail loops around the lake and through the forest before returning to the park entrance. Herd.As we drove through the valley, we found a herd of sheep blocking the narrow mountain road.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.